Now, let's look at another scenario. Let's say someone sues you and their claim is that you gave them COVID-19, they got sick, they got medical bills, they suffered, they lost income, and they want you to pay for it because you were the one who gave them COVID-19. You don't have $1 million that they're asking you for, and so you remember that you had some insurance. So you want to see if your insurance would cover that claim. Now let's look at your insurance. We're using our lemonade policy again. All right. Now, the first stop is our declarations page. We look at our declarations page to see what kinds of things would be covered. Now, remember in our example, someone is suing us, they said we gave them COVID-19. Personal property coverage, that would not be important. Loss of use, that doesn't seem to be important. Personal liability, that could be important. Medical payments to others, that could be important. Portable electronics, that's not applicable in our situation. So, two potential types of coverage here. So let's look at those different coverages. Okay, so personal liability coverage. If a claim is made or a suit is brought against an insured, and insured is in quotes, which means that there's a special meaning, for damages because of bodily injury or property damage caused by an occurrence to which this coverage applies. So if that happens, they will pay up to the policy limit or they'll provide a defense in court. All right? So a couple important things. What is an insured? We have to look at the definition of an insured. If it's your policy, you're probably an insured. It says because of bodily injury or property damage. Now the person is suing you because you gave them COVID-19. There's no property damage issue, so bodily injury, does that apply? Is COVID-19 a bodily injury? Well, it doesn't seem like that would be a bodily injury. What do you think of when you hear bodily injury? You may think of some sort of impact, like somebody, a car accident, or somebody punches in your face. That would be a bodily injury. But in our case, they're suing about COVID-19. This is in quotes, so let's try to find out what bodily injury means. So we go to our definition section and we need to find bodily injury. Now it says bodily injury means bodily harm, sickness, or disease. Bodily harm, so that's kind of what we thought about when we heard bodily injury, but it also includes sickness or disease. So you'll say, okay, COVID-19, that's a disease. So bodily injury, so that's some hope for coverage, right? Then it says an occurrence has to be caused by an occurrence. So let's look at what an occurrence means. Occurrence means an accident, including continuous or repeated exposure to substantially the same general harmful condition, which results during the policy period in bodily injury or property damage. So an occurrence is an accident that causes bodily injury. Bodily injury means bodily harm or sickness or disease. All right. So it has to be an accident. So did you give that person COVID-19 by accident, or was it not an accident? If it's not an accident, it's not covered, right? So let's say it was an accident. You didn't even know that you gave this person COVID-19. So there may be some sort of coverage there, right? Now, there's also the medical payments to others coverage, and let's see what that covers. We will pay the necessary medical expenses that are incurred or medically ascertained within 3 years from the date of an accident causing bodily injury. Now, it doesn't say an occurrence, it says an accident, but earlier, an occurrence is pretty much an accident. And there were some other things included in an occurrence, but this one is just an accident. So if that person got COVID-19 from you as a result of an accident, then there may be coverage, all right? But you have to look out for the exclusions. You have to look out for the exclusions, because it may seem as if you have coverage until you look at the exclusion sections. Now, exclusions, and again, look at this first exclusion, motor vehicle liability. So if the accident was caused by your motor vehicle, there is no coverage under this policy. And let's scroll down a little bit. Now look at E, and that applies to both the personal liability section and the medical payments to others section. Number 6, it doesn't cover communicable diseases, which would include COVID-19. COVID-19 is communicable. And this is a very important exclusion. And here's why. Because remember we said bodily injury means, let's go back to our definition of bodily injury. So bodily injury means bodily harm, sickness, or disease. Okay? So sickness or disease. Accidental sickness or disease, because if you do it on purpose, it's not covered. So it covers sickness or disease, but it excludes communicable diseases. So you have to think about a disease that you can accidentally cause somebody to have that is not a communicable disease. And so that definition of bodily injury was so broad, surprisingly broad, because it covered sickness and disease, but it excludes communicable diseases. And so that really narrows it down. So maybe if they got some sort of infection or something, then that may be covered. So, but it's not, it doesn't give that broad coverage, and it doesn't cover sexually transmitted diseases, it wouldn't cover flus, it wouldn't cover anything that you could just pass from one person to another. So that really limited the definition of bodily injury that previously seemed very broad. Now, this section also has conditions. So even if there is coverage, even if the coverages are not excluded, there are still these conditions. Now, in our example, COVID-19 would be a communicable disease, it would be excluded. Your insurance company would not pay for that. And so we could probably just stop our analysis there, or we could look through the policy to see if there's something else that would have restored coverage. Maybe we'll look for an endorsement that gives back coverage. Maybe we could look at case law to see what courts have said about this kind of coverage. And so there are ways to look, there are different ways that we could try to get around that, but it says communicable diseases are excluded, and so that's going to be a very difficult task trying to get around that to get coverage. Now, But let's just look at the conditions. Now, each section may have their own sets of conditions. In the previous videos, we talked about the condition that you have to give notice. And it just said notice, it didn't say whether it had to be in writing or whether you could just call over the phone. It didn't specify what kind of notice, it said prompt notice. Now in this section, the notice is different. It says you have to give written notice to us or agent as soon as practical. And so, in conclusion, in our example, there probably would not be any coverage if someone accuses you of giving them COVID-19. Now, if you would like us to look at your policy and to review your situation to see if an insurance claim was validly denied, we would be happy to do that at no cost to you.